What's up, everybody? Today we are going over Resident Evil. Just isn't just a video game series, it's a timeline of our fears, from tank controls and pre-rendered nightmares to over-the-shoulder action and first-person terror. This franchise reinvented itself more times than the T-Virus has mutated. And today, we're ranking every Resident Evil game, originals and remakes together, based on what they did right, what they did wrong, and what made them unforgettable. Some of the games changed the industry, some changed our childhoods, and well, some should have stayed locked in the Umbrella Lab. This is the evolution of survival horror, one nightmare at a time. Let's start at the bottom and climb our way top of Raccoon City.
Resident Evil.
Number 15 on our list comes out to Resident Evil Reverse, multiplayer game that came out in 2022. It's the kid at the Resident Evil family reunion who showed up uninvited, brought nothing, and left still early. It was supposed to be a celebration of the franchise, but it ended up feeling more like a technical test than they escaped the lab. Bugs came out early in the game, viruses came out in the game, people were hacking the game in the beginning. Even though I had a roster full of all-stars, Leon, Claire, Jill, Chris, Ada, Hunk, and a handful of transformations. It was a great cast, but the wrong game. A lot of the pros that we had on it was fun on paper. You had heroes battling off in iconic locations, quick matches, easy to pick up. Some transformation are generally cool. Turning into Nemesis or Jack Baker is wild. It's free with Village, so at least it didn't cost extra for the fans. Now, it felt unfinished, like a beta never graduated before. Janky hit detection and inconsistent balancing. Maps are tiny and repetitive. No long-term progression or reason to keep playing. And player base evaporated faster than the T-Virus outbreak in a cutscene. Now, what made it unique was it was a rare Resident Evil game that tied to be a multiplayer celebration, but ended up reminding us that not every franchise needs a PvP mode. It's a curiosity, a footnote, but still part of the Resident Evil legacy. Reverse isn't the worst idea Capcom ever had, but it might be most forgettable one. So let's move on to a game that at least tried to something bold. Number 14 on my list goes to a game from 2015 called Resident Evil Revelations 2. Revelations 2 is the definition of surprisingly decent. It's a sequel nobody expected, built on a budget that definitely wasn't expecting us, but somehow it delivers a weird, gritty B-movie charm that sticks with you. You had a surprising strong cast of Claire Redfield, finally back in the lead role, Maura Burton, the flashlight queen profanity champion, Barry Burton, the legend returns, Natalia, that creepy kid with mysterious powers, and of course, we can't go without any of the pros and cons. The pros being the episodic format actually works. Cliffhangers kept you hooked on the game. Barry's campaign was fantastic, moody, atmospheric, classic Resident Evil vibes. The co-op is fun, it's like we're surviving this together way. Raid mode was addictive and arguably the best part of the package. Now, some of the cons of the game felt that Claire's campaign felt weaker and more repetitive. Budget limitations show, stiff animations, and bland environments. Story swings between serious drama and absolute cheese. Natalia's point at enemies mechanic isn't for everyone and not as polished or memorable as the first Revelations. What made this game unique was its scrappy underdog, low-budget experiment that punches above its weight thanks to character chemistry and surprisingly emotional Barry storyline. It's flawed, but it's got heart. Revelations 2 may not be the top tier of Resident Evil, but it's got enough charm to avoid bottom of the barrel. Speaking of the bottom, let's talk about a game that aimed high and still managed to trip on its own leeches. And if we're talking about any other game, it is a game that I cannot stand, and I've been hearing there's gonna be a remake of it, but it's no other than the 2002 GameCube game, Resident Evil 0. And don't get mad at me. Resident Evil 0 is a prequel nobody asked for, but we got anyways. It tries to explain the origins of the T-virus and ends up giving us a leech-obsessed opera singer and a train that derails harder than a plot. Your main characters were Rebecca Chambers, a rookie medic, queen of opposition, and Billy Cohen, ex-marine, walking tattoo, misunderstood badass. The odd couple dynamic is the heart of the game. Now, some of the pros was gorgeous pre-rendered backgrounds, some of the best in the GameCube. The opening train section is atmospheric and iconic. Partner zapping system is a cool idea, and classic survival horror vibes, puzzles, item management, and tension. Some of the bad things about the game was no item boxes. You drop items on the floor like a messy roommate. Backtracking becomes a chore. Story is, well, leeches, lots and lots of leeches. Billy deserved more of a character development as well. The uniqueness about this game was it was pure classic style Resident Evil after the original trilogy. Tank controls, fixed cameras, puzzle heavy design. It's flawed, but it's a time capsule of what Resident Evil used to be. Resident Evil 0 had ambition. It just needed fewer leeches and more logic. Now let's move on to a game that went handheld and off the rails. And that is no other than number 12 on our list, Resident Evil Gaiden. From the 2001 Game Boy Color. Gaiden is a weird cousin of the franchise, the one you don't talk about unless somebody brings it up in Thanksgiving. It's a portable experiment that feels like a fan game Capcom accidentally published. Your main characters, yes, Leon Kennedy, Mary Burton returns again, and they're trapped on a cruise ship fighting green and goo monsters. No, I am serious about this. Some of the pros, it was ambitious for a Game Boy Color title. Unique first-person timing bar combat system, surprisingly moody soundtrack for an 8-bit hardware, and Barry being Barry is always fun. Some of the issues in the game was the combat was clunky and repetitive. Story is bizarre and non-canon. Limited hardware means limited scars, and the twisted ending is infamous for a reason. Gaiden made it become unique because it was a what if of Resident Evil. A strange alternative universe where handheld horror tried something bold. It's not good, but it's unforgettable. Gaiden walked over, so weird RS spin-offs run. Speaking of weird, let's talk about the most chaotic mainline game ever made. And that is no other than number 11 from 2012, Resident Evil 6. Resident Evil 6 is Capcom saying, what if we made every game at once? It's 4 campaigns, 3 tones, 2 good ideas, and 1 giant identity crisis. Your main characters, Leon and Helena, Chris and Pyres, Jack and Sherry, and Ada. It's the Avengers of RE campaigns, but without the cohesion. The pros on it, you had tons of content. This game was huge. Some generate awesome set pieces. Jake and Sherry's chemistry is underrated. Leon's opening hours feel like a classic Resident Evil with a modern twist. And the co-op is chaotic fun with the right partner. Now, it did have its little problems out there, like over-the-top action kills to the horror. Too many QTEs. Story is messy and totally inconsistent. Chris's campaign feels more like a Gears of Evil, and the gameplay systems are a little bloated out there. I mean, it was unique out there because the franchise's midlife crisis, loud, explosive, confused, and fascinating. It's the moment Capcom realized they needed to return to horror. Resident Evil 6 isn't the worst. It's just the most extra out there. Now let's talk about a game that brought the series back to its roots, literally. And that is no other than the 2007 teen game, number 10 on our list, Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. Resident Evil 7 is the rebirth of the franchise, a bold first-person reboot that drags the series back into pure horror. It's sweaty palms, creaky floorboards, who's in the hallway terror. You had Ethan Winters as the most unlucky man in gaming, Mia Winters, wife with secrets, and the Baker family. Southern hospitality meets nightmare fuel. Some of the pros in the game was terrifying atmosphere. The Bakers are iconic villains. First-person perspective work shockingly well. Strong opening hours. The house is unforgettable. Great VR implementation and a true return to survival horror. Some of the issues in the game were the final acts into action territory. Ethan is intensely bland early on. Some enemy varieties issues, and the boss fights can be kind of hit or miss. What made this game unique was that it was like the reset button of Resident Evil. The game that saved the franchise from embracing fear again. It's intimate, brutal, and unforgettable. Resident Evil 7 brought back horror, but the next game back brought the drama. And the drama comes from no other than the 2000 game on the Dreamcast known as Resident Evil Code Veronica. Code Veronica is the most theatrical Resident Evil ever made. It's gothic, dramatic, unhinged, and full of moments that feel like a soap opera directed by Wesker. Your main characters, Claire Redfield, still searching for her brother Chris. Chris Redfield, the Big Brother mode activated, Steve Burnside, an anime protagonist energy, and Alfred and Alexa Ashford, the peak Resident Evil weirdness. The pros of the game were the huge environments and ambitious storytelling, some of the best classic style puzzles. Wesker's glow up begins here, iconic boss fights and cutscenes, and the Dreamcast visuals were groundbreaking. Now, you did have some of those little issues out there, like the difficulty spikes. The Tyrant plane fight says hello. Steve is, Steve. Backtracking can be brutal, and story goes full telenovela at times. What makes it unique is that Code Veronica is the most dramatic Resident Evil, a wild, operatic tale that feels like the missing link between classic Resident Evil and the modern era. Code Veronica is unforgettable, for better or for the weirder side. Now let's talk about a game that rewrites Raccoon City from the very different angle. And that is no other one game that I love a lot. Number 8 on our list, Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City in 2012. Operation Raccoon City is a what if we were the bad guys spinoff, a squad-based shooter where you play as Umbrella's cleanup crew, rewriting history. The main characters, the Wolfpack Squad, Vector, Lupo, Beltway, Bertha, Four Eyes, Spectre, each with the unique abilities, none with deep personalities. The pros of the game was a cool concept. Playing as Umbrella is fresh, fun abilities, and class-based gameplay. Multiplayer can be a chaotic fun, and seeing iconic Resident Evil moments from a new angle is super awesome. Now, some of the issues. AI back in the day was not that great. It was a lot of roughness. Story is non-canon and is messy. The shooting feels loose and unpolished. Boss fights become inconsistent, and the mixed identity. It's not horror, it's not full shooter. What made it unique was it was the only Resident Evil game that you can actually kill Leon. That alone makes it a historical artifact for me. Operation Raccoon City had potential. It just needed more polish and fewer retcons. Now let's talk about a game that embraced a co-op and punched boulders into history. That is no other than number 7, Resident Evil 5 from 2009. Resident Evil 5 is an action blockbuster of the franchise, a sun-drenched co-op focused thrill ride where Chris Redfield's arms are bigger than most enemies. Your main characters are Chris Redfield and Shiva Alamar, an underrated partner and total badass. Some of the pros in the game is that co-op is some of the best in the series. Great pacing and set pieces. Wesker's final showdown is legendary. Strong enemy variety and tons of replay value. Some of the issues was that horror took a backseat to action. The AR partner can be frustrating solo, some tonal inconsistencies, and story leans into camp. It made a uniqueness out there because it was the most fun co-op Resident Evil game, a high energy action ride that still delivers iconic moments. Resident Evil 5 was a blast with a friend, but the next game also brought the series back to the ocean. We go to number 6 right now, Resident Evil Revelations from 2012 on the 3DS. Revelations is a surprise hit, a handheld game that ended up being one of the most atmospheric entries in the series. The main characters being Jill Valentine, Chris Redfield, and Parker and Jessica, the new BSAA agents with personality. Some of the pros in the game were the Queen Zenobia ship setting is incredible, strong horror atmosphere, great mix of exploration and action. Raid mode is insanely addictive. Impressive visuals for handheld origin. Now, some of the cons of the game was episodic pacing can be feel choppy, some side missions break immersion, enemy variety is limited, and story jumps around way too much. What made it unique was Revelations proved Resident Evil can still be scary even on a handheld. It's a love letter to classic Resident Evil with modern polish. Revelations brought horror back, but the next game brought a monster who never stops chasing. And if you know what I'm talking about, It is our number 5 game, Resident Evil 3 and Resident Evil 3 Remake from 1999 and 2020. Resident Evil 3 is pure adrenaline. Jill Valentine versus Nemesis is a non-stop chase through Raccoon City. You had Jill Valentine, Carlos Olivia, the Globe King, and Nemesis, the original Mr. X on steroids. Some of the biggest pros on the game was branching paths and live selection choices. Nemesis is terrifying, great pacing and action, stunning visuals. Carlos is incredible, and tight and polished gameplay. Some of the cons was it was a little bit shorter than Resident Evil 2, more action heavy, had a lot of content when it came to the remake, less Nemesis presence, and a very short campaign compared to other remakes out there. Resident Evil 3 is a run for your life entry, the most intense, fast-paced, classic Resident Evil experience. Nemesis made us all paranoid, but the next game changed gaming forever, with number 4 being no other than Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 4 Remake from 2005 and 2023. Resident Evil 4 is the revolution, the game that redefined action horror and influenced the entire generation of shooters. You had Leon S. Kennedy, the peak cool guy era, Ashley Graham, the presidential daughter, Ada Wong, and Louis Serra, the fan favorite rogue. The game had perfect pacing, iconic set pieces, revolution gameplay, memorable characters and humor, glorious visuals, improved story and character depth, modernized combat, and incredible atmosphere. But it did have its little problems, like some cheesy dialogue, but we still love it. Escort mechanics can be kind of annoying. The knife durability in the remake was just terrible, and some cult or altered moments. What makes it unique is that it's Resident Evil 4 is a lightning in a bottle, a masterpiece in both versions. Resident Evil 4 changed the industry of all Resident Evil games, but the next game did change the franchise, and I have to go with number 3, which is a little bit shocking, and it's other than Resident Evil Village from 2021. Village is Resident Evil embracing its fairy tale nightmare side, a blend of gothic horror, folklore, and over-the-top villains. You had Ethan Winters, still suffering, Chris Redfield, the mysterious motives, and the 4 lords, get it, Lady D, Heisenberg, Morena, and Donna Benevento. The game has some of the most incredible variety in environments. Lady Dimitrescu became an icon overnight. Strong pacing and memorable bosses. Great blend of Resident Evil 4 action and Resident Evil 7 horror. Beautiful visuals and atmosphere, but it did have some issues. Some sections are stronger than others. Final act leans heavily into action, and Ethan's personality is still kind of muted out there. Now, Village is a gothic roller coaster, a modern Resident Evil that embraces spectacle without losing horror roots. Village is unforgettable, but the next game is where Resident Evil truly began. And we go to no other than number 2 on our list, Resident Evil and Resident Evil Remake from 1996 and 2002. The birth of survivor horror. The mansion, the dogs, the puzzles, the atmosphere. The remake perfected everything. Your main characters, Jill Valentine, Chris Redfield, Wesker, and Barry. The mansion itself, a character in its own right. It defined the genre. Iconic scares, memorial voice acting, for better or worse. One of the best remakes ever made. Crimson Heads add real fear, stunning visuals and atmosphere, and perfect pacing. But of course, being a game that was so far from when it started, it did have some tank controls that can be rough today, and still challenging for newcomers when it came to the remake. This is the foundation, the blueprint for every Resident Evil game. The mansion started Resident Evil for everyone, but the next game perfected it all. And that is my favorite Resident Evil of all time. Number 1 on our list is no other than Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 2 Remake from 1998 and 2019. Resident Evil 2 is the gold standard, the perfect blend of horror, action, atmosphere, and character. The remake didn't just bring horror to it, it elevated it. You had Leon S. Kennedy, the rookie cop legend, Claire Redfield, the heart of the franchise, Ada Wong, the Femme Fatale, and Mr. X, the Unstoppable Nightmare. Some of the best things in the game: the dual campaigns, the iconic location, the perfect pacing, the memorable characters. It had stunning visuals, stunning Mr. X, the smooth modern gameplay, the incredible sound design, and the faithful but fresh game as well. Some of the issues the game had in the beginning was the inventory juggling, some cheesy dialogue, and the remake, the A-B scenario differences reduced. Some cut out a lot of the content as well. What made it unique was Resident Evil 2 is the heart of the franchise, the perfect expression of what Resident Evil is. Resident Evil 2 isn't just a game of the series, it's one of the best horror survival games ever made. We go now into what we have to say, like Resident Evil survived 3 decades because it never stopped evolving. It's messy, it's experimental, it's bold, and every game, even the weird ones, push the franchise somewhere new. From the mansion that started it all, to the remake that perfected it, to the game that redefined survival horror in the new generation, this series has given us the most iconic moments in gaming history. But now, I want to hear from you. What is your personal Resident Evil ranking? What games did I place too high? What did I disrespect? Let the arguments begin. Now, respectfully, or not. I could bring out a nemesis at you or anything like that. But if you enjoyed this trip to Raccoon City, drop a like, subscribe, and join me for more retro nostalgia, deep dives, and chaotic gaming adventures. I'm MrRetroTroll, and remember, stay safe out there, because in this world, every hallway can be your last.